right, it's Chris Porteous here for the Vintage Rebellion. I'm here with Andy Preston, and earlier this month I had the privilege of attending the Empire State Club's The Annual, which is probably the most extravagant and enjoyable collectors club event that you can possibly attend. And if you're in the Facebook groups, you've probably seen a few photos from it recently. And it was just the right time to talk to somebody who was integrally involved in that event, and that's Chris Riehle, and we have him here today. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, Chris, I'm good. Thanks.
Hey, Chris, good to meet you. I'm going to have to get out to one of these annual events one of these days.
Love to have you over here, Andy.
It looks fantastic. I know Rich, my co-host here, came over in 2019, and he says it's one of the best events he's been to. So that's quite a testimony.
It was one of my highlights of that weekend in 2019 was picking Rich up from the airport, which was a small local airport that's a military base in Newburgh, New York. But I picked him up in a 1986 CJ7 old Jeep, that's more American than anything. And I know he's a big Guns N' Roses fan, so I had appetite for destruction, blasting for him, hop on in the back. And it was just, kind of gave him a little bit of a welcome. And it's a little corny, but it was really, sometimes corny's fun.
Doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
So just for the few people in the audience who are totally unfamiliar with the event, why don't you just give us a little bit of background on the conception of it? I know you got a core team of people who really get everything done. So why don't you give us a little bit of background on how did the first one come around?
The idea stemmed from, myself, my wife, and, working with a close friend that lives down near me here, Ron Salvatore. I'm sure I know he's a friend of the podcast as well. And, when we go to celebrations and we, go to cons and stuff, some of the best parts, in our opinion, that we share are, not just the time on the show floor, but just the time hanging out, getting together with people, hanging out in the bars or the hotel lounges until, all night long, not sleeping and stuff. And that's where, some of our connections and, best relationships are, formed and nurtured. And a lot of things we look forward to. So, the idea kind of came from, we have meetups, part of the Empire Club is, meetups in different collectors' houses are a big thing. It's, it's in that like that for several other clubs as well. And it was really coming like, why don't we try to capture that essence of, what we get at Celebration. I'm not trying to mimic Celebration, not trying to mimic a con, not trying to compete with anything, but basically it's about to capture those memories we have with people, And I looked at it, I was like, let's say for an example, I got a room over here where it's like I got all, my collection and stuff, and I got a beautiful 12-back Vader there, whatever, right? Kenner Vader, and I walk past it every day, and I'm proud of it. I love it, I smell it. But it's just for me, and it has some value, I guess, right? It's subjective, but and if I'm going to buy another card or invest in my collection, it's just for me. My point is I just walk by it every day, and it's just like I'm the only one that really sees it and enjoys it. But what if I take the same funds that I could throw into buying that 12-back Vader, and I could actually create or help to create an experience and memories for a bunch of people. And once that started resonating with me, it's kind of clicked. And it was like a no-brainer, hey, I'll take some of my collecting budget for the summer or the year or whatever and put it towards making memories with people. Hey, not to sound, again, I'm on this corny path here, but, we're not here that long. We don't know where we could be tomorrow. We don't know what could happen tomorrow. So those times we could have together are probably a little bit more special to me than maybe that card that's on the wall. Granted, I'm not selling my collection or getting rid of that, right? But, it did help me to refocus that, hey, I'm going to take some of my collecting funds for the year and I'm going to invest it into an event to create an experience for people that is rooted in the same kind of experiences that we have during Celebration when we all get together and hang out late at night.
Well, the Star Wars collecting world is really a great way to meet like-minded people, to make friends, to chat, to banter. And as you say, some of the best times that'll be had, not necessarily doing the things that you're supposed to do at conventions, but doing the chat and the room meets and the room sales and just hanging out with friends. And yeah, I'm all for that. I think it's been thrown into sharp relief through the COVID years, a couple of years when we actually couldn't do that. And I, for one, have appreciated so much the ability to get back out and see people and engage face to face. And so, yeah, people like yourself putting these events on, spending the money, taking the time, because it does take a lot of investment in both money and in time to do these things. But, it's so much appreciated by the collecting community as a whole.
Yeah, and it's not just the people, the individuals that are working to put this event on that are the only ones investing. There's people that are so generous to sponsor, that are going above and beyond, or not even sponsor financially, but contributing with their time. I could go on and on about the amount of contributors and the generous sponsors that we've had, and really, it wouldn't be possible to do the event if it wasn't for let's say the buy-in and the belief from the rest of the collecting community, because we wouldn't have been able to do it on our own. Just like that small amount of money I was talking about, it's not possible. It's a major event. And one thing that somebody mentioned to me during this past weekend when we had the annual too, was they mentioned it's like a boutique celebration, and and it kind of is. What we focus on with it is a whole day, and a whole day event that starts, that's around socialization, and we come in, we're going to have a number of panels going throughout the day. So we have a room that on one side we'll set it up audio and visual for the presentations, and the other side we have cash bar, some other activities that are going on, and we try to make or get presentations that are not recycled presentations, that are generated specifically for the event. I guess I could dive into it a little here. This past event we had 4 presentations, was it, Chris? I believe it was 4 presentations. We had Tom Quinn and Jason Thomas did the first presentation, speaking about Tara Toys. They're out of New York. That's where we are right now, where I am, and they are the ones that created the very, I guess, famous or not famous, but beloved unlicensed action figure cases that we see so many of, at least around here, that are popped up all over the place. So that was interesting. That was followed by a podcast hosted by David Quinn, where he went through some great finds, talking to Ron Salvatore, Eric Janicki, and Matt George, who all brought stuff to the tables, talking about probably some stories that have been kicked around the community for years, but maybe never formalized into a presentation like that. And then Yehuda Kleinman and Jonathan, McElwain. Did I get it, Chris?
That sounds right to me. Yeah.
Thank you. I love him so much too, and I butcher his last name. He's such a great guy. They did a presentation on mailways, right? And you think mailways, it's like, oh, we got you could go on forums, there's baggies, and there's all this stuff. I think Kenner, or I think Palatoy, I think Kenner action figure related mailways, but they actually did a dive into mailways and redemptions and premiums on just some obscure stuff that was never spoke. It was some new content. It was excellent content, and from what I understand, a lot of this stuff hasn't been really covered that much. But just diving into the deep lands of food, prizes you would get from food out of all over the world or whatever. It made me realize how many mailway items I actually have in my collection that I had no clue were actually mailway items, right? Or redeemed from some sort of mailway. And then the last presentation was done by Chris G. And it was about it. He covered his trip to Tunisia. I think it was back in the late 90s, where he went out to Tunisia and he did an in-depth presentation covering all the towns he went to and what he brought back, which was amazing stories and great to hear. So the exciting part of that there was that we were getting content that we were you're getting content that's on the level of what you would get at Celebration or any kind of larger con. It's an intimate setting, and it's among friends, and it's a great time.
One thing I really want to stress to people, and we'll post some photos along with this interview when the episode comes out, but the stage setup at this is like, it's better looking than the collecting track stage at Celebration. Like it has no reason to be, but it is. And I mean, and a big shout out to Mark Rusiano for sort of collaborating with you guys this year. And the event itself, in terms of the size of the audience, doesn't justify this amount of decadence, but nevertheless, there it is, and it looks awesome. And it's so crazy to see that amount of sort of infrastructure and quality put into these presentations. And it's like, yes, we're going to talk about bootleg action figure cases for 45 minutes or whatever it is. I don't know. It's awesome. We'll share some photos of that. And I do really implore people to like check those out, because the scale and the quality of the presentation of all this stuff is just, you can't believe what you're looking at for a regional club event. Although, some reasonable percentage of the attendees were international, I guess. So it's a little more than that. And many not local to New York, right, Chris?
Correct. We had folks that came in from all regions of the country, Canada, Australia. That was this year, and then back in 2019 we had Rich from the UK, we had Matthias from Sweden, and Lee from Australia, and the Cuddies, and we had a bunch of Canadians come this time. It was really great. It was, including you guys, and Mike Freeman. It was an awesome time. But Rusiano did an excellent job, and I was you're putting this thing on, and you want to keep it. I guess maybe it's just human to have some insecurities about it. Are people going to show up? You don't want to have that. You want to mitigate the cringe factor of it, right? And I think that was probably one of our biggest priorities, is that not to have something that was put on that just looks empty, that looks like you're trying too hard, or we're trying to keep it classy and to the point, but with quality. And Mark really understood that vision of what we were going for there, and he delivered 100% on it. We didn't go over the top. There wasn't lighting truss and stuff like that. He delivered audio, the pipe and drape, the kick lights and that kind of stuff, and with some tactful hanging of banners. It presented well, and that's where you get that little feel of a boutique Celebration. And the idea of doing that within a hotel, right? So we have everybody there. You're staying in the hotel. So after the event, which is 9 hours long, we hang out and we stay up to late hours of the night and such. So jumping around a little bit. Along with the presentations, we also had other activities, so like more activity going on. You have people talking and stuff like that, catching up in the back of the room. But also we had ceramic paint, which I cast. That's another whole nother rabbit hole to talk about. But a few of us, Ron, Yehuda, and I, we actually cast out of some vintage molds that I had using slip, earthenware slip, and poured some old knockoff. Using those old molds, poured some ceramics. We gave them a base coat, put them on there. We had sign-ups, and everybody provided paints, and everybody decorated them, painted them up, and then we auctioned them off for Rancho at the end. Also with several other, artistic creations that were made by Joe O'Neill, Michael Cooper, and Charmaine Cuddy. And at the end of it, we ended up raising about $4,100 and change for Rancho Obi-Wan.
That's fabulous. Great effort.
Yeah, that was cool.
And one other thing I wanted to sort of bring up during this interview, Chris, is I had the unique experience of inviting a friend who's local to Fishkill to this event, who has no experience with the Empire State Club. He's a Star Wars fan, but not a vintage collector. And I got to sort of see sort of what the uninitiated perspective is on something like this. And it was just the idea of to a Star Wars fan who lives local to this, the idea that this was going on in his backyard like totally blew him away. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to him. His name was Zach Weber, and it was just like the idea, like you know how you wanted to keep it chill and sort of understated and relaxed. Like this guy could not believe what was going on at this thing and the amount of effort poured into it. And I think that's a good example of sort of how a very high percentage of the attendees take this. Like we can't imagine how the amount of effort you're putting into this stuff.
I got to speak with Zach, and he's an awesome dude. And to really, what you're telling me is is one of the goals of putting on this event is to, in the early stages when we talked about this in 2019 and put it on, was the hopes of bringing in new people to the collecting community, in an environment where it's not someone's house, right, where people are a little bit more reserved in welcoming people to their house for the first time or opening the doors to the public, that this is a place where you could bring in that new blood. And it really hasn't turned work that way, but Zach is an example of what we were really targeting initially to get out of this when we were putting this on. And I'm glad to hear that type of feedback. And sometimes we need something like that just to break the ice and jump in a little bit more within the regional collecting club groups and stuff, and come to a meetup, right?
It's crazy. Like he lives in Fishkill basically, and like he didn't even know the Imperial Castle was there. Like we went over there and he was going absolutely nuts when JP like brought us down to the basement and stuff. He's buying sequel trilogy store displays and all kinds of craziness. Like
That's awesome, man.
He kind of lost his mind. So I mean, theoretically, that's somebody who's going to be continually showing up to these things from now on. So it's cool that on some level that happens, but I feel like he reflected to me that we could maybe do more to like bring in those outsiders, and I'm not sure what means you would do to do that, because I think in our sort of circle it's not unusual to sort of say I'm going to buy a ticket to go to a collectors club meetup. I think to some uninitiated collectors that seems like a strange thing to do, but like when you get there and you realize the amount of infrastructure and effort being put in to sort of curate an experience, it all makes sense to you right away. And I don't know, it'd be interesting to see if unique methods could be devised to bring in outsiders a little bit more, but because they'd absolutely enjoy it once they got there. And I think what we're doing right now is part of that, I guess. If Rich was crazy enough to fly over for the first annual, somebody else might be as well.
Yeah, you're right. It's a really good point, and it's love to see it go that way, because I think a lot of this is the motives are pure, right? There's no financial gain or anything from doing an event like this. It's built on the idea of friendship, memories, community, and for the love of the collecting that we do, right? And so when we can nurture that and open the doors to other people, it's like it's awesome. So because in no way is it an exclusive event. We don't publicly announce it on the radio or anything like that. We don't make billboards or anything like that. It's just if you're involved with the club page or you're friends with somebody in the group or you're in the group, you're welcome. There's really no
yeah. On that subject, I think David Quinn has been doing an amazing job of blasting it out there. I feel like he's done 5 podcasts about the annual and going into excruciating detail about every amazing thing that's happened at it. And he does stress the point that if you want to go to this thing, here's step 1, 2, 3. It's not that hard. You can figure it out. You can put the effort in, and you can come along. So I think it's good that he sort of hammers that point home as well.
Yeah, he's been awesome. Helping with this as well. Again, there's so many people that are willing to help and contribute in so many different facets with their own individual talents and and assets, that it makes it wonderful. It really does.
So on that note, Chris, where do you see the event going in future? Is it something that you'd be looking to grow and develop and expand, or is it something that will just grow naturally as the number of attendees grows? Where what are your plans for future years?
That's a good question, and coming off of it, coming off of the weekend, that's the common question, right? Everybody's all fired up and such, and they're asking when's the next one. I like Jonathan said to me during the weekend he was going to introduce his start his presentation with like welcome back to the occasional, right? So if it's an occasional event, I'm happy with that. Right now, there's no direct plans for 2023. It's gonna come when the timing's right, and it's gonna be genuine. And the idea is not to make work out of it, right? It's a fun experience. It's not easy putting together, right? But it's enjoyable, right? And so keeping it at that kind of level is important, I think, with the sustainability of doing something like this.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not wanting to compete with the likes of Celebration or ICCC, with hundreds and thousands of attendees.
It's a genuine, just somewhere where we could come and have a good time, and see our friends, eat food, get some good presentations that you're not going to get anywhere else, that are crafted specifically for the event. Take part in some activities that you're probably not going to get anywhere else. I know I have a love for old unlicensed ceramics and stuff, but like the stuff, what other events are you going to go to where you're going to be painting a C3PO from a 40-year-old cast, and stuff. You make your own.
Absolutely.
Of course, you can't leave out the fact that there's an amazing buy sell trade section of the night where you will find some cool stuff, because you'll never have that many collectors in one room with plenty of table space to hawk their wares and find interesting stuff. And you also, if people you could hang around past Saturday had the opportunity to tour some absolutely one of a kind, breathtaking collections, which like for me, it's the interaction with the other collectors, and then it's those collection tours for the coolest thing about this event. So I don't want to let this interview go by without sort of touching on that. It's great that it's sort of, you guys have this set up in an area where there's enough of you down there that you can sort of make some decisions about who wants to sort of open their doors and show off some stuff, because we know people who put in a crazy amount of work into these displays. So I'm sure it's a little bit exciting for them to be able to sort of bring people through in a structured format all at once.
Yeah, that's pretty well put. When we look at the Saturday event, we're like, there's a lot of folks coming in from out of town, so we try to make it not like worth it, but we are definitely mindful of folks traveling, and then trying to at least provide suggestions or accommodations for multiple days. So when we had Friday, we offered a hiking excursion where we went up Storm King Mountain, which is just south of Fishkill. There, it's right on the Hudson. It's looking right over, basically just north of West Point, and it's some beautiful landscape there. We hiked up there, about 14 of us, but and that was really enjoyable. And then on Sunday we had Ron opened the doors to his house and for viewing his collection for most of the day, and then we also coordinated getting Pride of the Hudson, which is it's a charter ferry, right? And we took a boat down the Hudson with everybody that wanted to attend, and then had a dinner afterwards. And then Monday we went to Yehuda's, and Yehuda goes above and beyond. He's an amazing and most generous host, and just even better of a person. And excellent collection to view, and it's just so we were down there Monday for people that were there for the extra day. So we make it as much as we can, so you're not just in Fishkill, New York, and then what, right?
As you say, all about making wonderful memories, and that sounds like some superb events. And
Yeah,
the collections of some of the names that the guys that you've mentioned there must be just stunning to see in person, a real opportunity that you just don't get elsewhere. In terms of the sales, and you mentioned the buy, sell, swap part of the event, The room sales at Celebration are one of my favourite parts of that event, and you see some wonderful pieces turn up in the room sales. Um, were there any particular standouts this time that were changing hands?
I know there's some good stuff that have come through, but Chris asked me earlier how much I get to attend during the swap meet section of the event. I brought some stuff to throw up, and I was pretty much running around, and I didn't even get to see much on the other tables, or I was a little hectic at that end for me, just making sure we stayed on time and stuff. So I wasn't making any classified deals. I could tell you that, but you know, it, once we wrap up, the schedule of the day, once we were getting towards the end, we give out the swag where we give out, custom made item gifts. They're not, I won't even want to call them swag, but they're, custom made gifts that are given to all the attendees and to the sponsors and contributors. We did that following the Rancho auction, and then it comes time for, swap meet, and I love the moment when that happens, because you see people just run into their rooms, run into their cars, pulling the tablecloths off of the tables, and we just raid it, and it's just like you get to see that unruly collectorism come out of people, and we go from being very proper and such all day, and you could kind of see the hotel staff just like looking around like, wow, what the hell is going on here? You see Jenicky just unrolling a carpet of stuff across 3 tables where there was once a buffet, and so it's pretty cool. It's pretty intense. It's fast moving, and it's fun that we could switch the vibe organically, just switches from something that seemed a little formal, to just, all right, here we go. This is what we came here for, and everybody pull out their stuff. So.
Excellent. You mentioned swag there. You like your swag, don't you, Chris? I know you've created some fantastic pieces. I've seen some prints that you've done for the Empire State Collectors Club.
Yes.
And Chris P, you showed me a piece that I think was done for Celebration.
Oh yeah.
The Admiral Akbar It's a Trap Mousetrap, which is a genius piece.
Those were literally made out of mouse traps. I found a bulk order of Victor is the brand, the American mousetrap that those are meant to approximate, and sat there chucking all the kill apparatuses off of them with a screwdriver, and then I crafted new using basswood. Fashioned new mousetraps, and then restapled on the apparatus on there, and he transferred the Admiral Akbar logo on there. It was fun. I love it. And then actually cast and poured a mouse droid to go with it in the bag. So there's a resin mouse droid that was hand cast to go in there as well. Those were fun.
A huge amount of work gone into that, but what a piece of swag. Hats off to you.
Thanks.
As we've said, the annual is something that's grown out of the Empire State Collectors Club. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the club, about how that started, and what else you get up to other than these collecting events?
Yeah, so the Empire State Star Wars Collectors Club was formed in late 2012. Jason Thomas and Thomas Quinn were the ones that formed it. They started with discussion on Rebel Scum that moved into a meetup of 4 people. It was Jason Thomas, Thomas Quinn, Mike Boniface, and Sky Payne, who met for the first official Empire State Star Wars Collectors Club meetup, and that was on October 21st, 2012. And I was introduced to the club in 2015, in June of 2015. Kind of, let's say, lingered for a little bit and attended my first meetup in 2016 at Tom Quinn's house. I've told the story before, and I'm sure, and I know a lot of folks can identify with it, is that, that jumping off point where you're going to walk up to someone's door of a house full of people you don't know, or from a presence online, but you never really met before, and you have something in common of loving 40-year-old toys. So that was an interesting experience. But I gotta say, once I was greeted at that door and welcomed by Tom's wife Corey and I saw Fonz, and then Tom, and then I met Michael Cooper. I can remember it exactly. Um, there was no turning back, and that's where kind of my collecting for myself, which was not so much in a hole or a black hole, but from started collecting in 2013, and I kind of is self-serving, right? Selfishly collecting, buying and selling just to fund, a self-sustaining collection. And I did really well with that in those years of, finding, just like telling the story of what so many people like we all did, was just finding stuff and turning it around, selling, and building a good reputation of being a good seller, an honest seller, right? That was my goal. And you start meeting more people, talking with folks from around the world. And that's where my initial bonds were coming from. And that was great. And I really loved it. And that kept me hooked in the community. But then once I started getting involved on a local end of meeting up with people and getting that real face-to-face experience, that kind of really made it three-dimensional for me in terms of collecting. And you know and I realized at that point, like everyone says, I'm now collecting memories and friends more than my
Mhm.
own stuff. And so, been a very active member of that group since. Love participating in it. The group has grown a bit, but I got to tell you, when it comes down to it, I really enjoy meeting with people, talking with people. I'm not a Facebook drama kind of guy or getting involved in that stuff. I like the real world interactions and stuff. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that face to face interaction that really does take a collecting journey. Well, to coin a phrase, it's taking a step into a larger universe, isn't it?
yeah,
And your experience chimes with that I've heard from so many other people, that the collecting community is so open and welcoming. You've all got plenty in common, and anybody listening to this who's not made that step, who's collecting in a bit of a vacuum or maybe online, but hasn't gone to any events. I mean, in the UK, we've got Farthest From, we've got Echo Live, we've got Comic Cons, etc. Do please, come along, try it, come along and say hi. You'll be welcomed with open arms, and you'll make a lot of friends very quickly. I thoroughly encourage that of anybody. So the collecting club, you meet regularly. I mean, do you have newsletters? Do you have, obviously you got the annual event? Do you do sort of Facebook events? How does
so
how do you guys interact?
we are probably some of the on more the informal end compared to other regional collecting groups that are here in the States. We are pretty loosey goosey in terms of we don't have there's nothing formalized, right? There's no set calendar times that we're going to do every year or every quarter and such. But we usually meet up around different individuals' homes that are probably go on about 4 to 6 times a year, or meet in different places. From anywhere from a Dave and Buster's down in the city, um, you know, to meeting at an arcade or such. Um, so pretty informal. Most of the communications done within the Facebook page itself. That over the last few years has grown a bit. So the development of any kind of meetups or such usually happens behind the scenes with an announcement on that Facebook page.
Yeah, and the Facebook page is the Empire State Collectors Club. Um, it's a private group, I believe, but anybody can find it on Facebook. Request to join, and anybody listening to this in the New York area, I'm sure would be made very welcome.
Awesome.
Yeah, we've learned that they don't actually have all of them yet, so there's still a few guys in the neighborhood that aren't aware of it, I'm sure.
No, it's amazing. I was so crazy to hear Zach lived right down the street and hear your feedback that he had a good time. That's the kind of stuff that makes it worthwhile, Think about doing it again.
Awesome, man. Well, although we're winding down about the event here, I just curious because I actually don't know the answer to this, even though I've been talking to you for a long time. You mentioned you got back into collecting in 2013. So like, and you sort of, you came to this realization that you want to pour some of that energy into club events and whatnot. But like, where's your collection at right now? Are you focusing on anything? Is it sort of like you're content with the sort of runs that you've got, and you're sort of, if you see something you like, you're into it? Like, where's the direction of that these days?
So, like many others, I started with a Kenner run and put together a Kenner run. I still have the whole Kenner run of carded figures, my loose collection and stuff. I'm missing like three mint on cards. Um, I'm not in a rush to get them because once I complete that run, I just, I like to have something that I'm, you know, chasing, right? I still need a Dengar, right? And I'm just going to be really picky about that Dengar, or um, but once I see a lot of our peers move past completing a loose run and then go into a carded run, and you see the progression going into pre-production and then props, etc. Right? For me, I don't have much interest in pre-production. I have a few pre-production items, but uh, at that point, I'm now collecting. My real love for what I collect right now is fan made items that are created during the vintage era. So, when old ceramics, knockoff ceramics that were created in the vintage era fall into that, those things bit me hard. I love them. I started, I really stumbled into those during the COVID times, like in, early in spring of 2020. And, good friend of mine, Ron, who lives down the street, he wrote a good article about the ceramics, and put out some stuff on there, and has an excellent collection of this stuff. So um, I really love that stuff. I could go on to that. I could talk about that for a while. But the fan created stuff from the period of the original trilogy is just like, that's the tits for me, right? So like think about, like, I want an at, right? Like, oh, I want for Christmas is an at or Millennium Falcon, and then you have an aunt that's like super crafty and talented, or grandmother or mother or father, whoever, that puts this time and creates something for you. And instead of Christmas or whatever holiday, Hanukkah or whatever, you don't get the at, but you get something that Aunt Nina made you, right? And you gotta like it. So if I could find an item like that, in, like, just to go back, like when you're a kid, you're completely crushed and disappointed that you got that. It's like, and you basically just want to throw it over your shoulder and cry. But to me, that those items today represent something about the fandom of where Star Wars was in our society at that time, and the impact it really just had on us socially. To the extent of the impact, right? And so, like, when I find items that people made during that era, they're really precious to me. And let's I love viewing collections, and I'll find viewing collections. I always love going to somebody's house and stuff, but I'm more critical of myself. Like, if I was going to have you folks over, it's like, you're going to come up, you want to see my run of 12 backs. I'm not saying 12 backs are great, I love them, but I'd rather have like this other item over here. Maybe it cost me like $5 or something, right? Or $50. But it's like, dude, it's like so unique compared to that 12 back or whatever, and there's a story behind it. So those are the kind of things, that interesting items that I'm looking for these days, that kind of do it for me. I feel like a lot of production figures or carded stuff, you can kind of just go on eBay at any time, and you just know, um, and get them whenever you want if you want to pay, right? So, um,
Yeah, no, that I totally understand that. One of my favorite things in my collection is I have one of those ceramic Vader lamps, probably the most common thing. But I got one of those and a R2 bank that was given to the same kid at Christmas in '79 and then '80. So the Millennium Falcon never came in. He got a ceramic one year and he got a ceramic again the next year. So like that, just the fact that you're saying they're sort of one of a kind thing. Just the fact that there's two given to the same kid a year apart makes it even more of a like one of a kind crazy thing, right? So they have like weird stories that you can sort of put together behind them.
I can just picture that kid opening the present the second Christmas thinking lightning can't strike twice.
Yeah,
This has got to be a cool spaceship. And it's a ceramic.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
Oh
great.
dear, crushing.
so that those like that aspect of it really I think is great. I've met people online before and driven down to Jersey, and I met this one guy in a parking lot in Paramus, and he's selling me these lamps that his grandmother made, and these ceramic lamps. And I'm looking at them; they're so well done. They're mint. They're just so much time went into them, and they're even inscribed to him on the bottom, like 1980 or whatever. And I'm looking at the dude. I'm like, "You're selling this to me?" Like I don't know, to each his own. But like, it's some of these things I can't imagine the sentimental value of people letting them go. But again, not everybody thinks like us or myself. But so taking that another step further, I mentioned Ron wrote a good article on the SWCA about ugly ceramics and kind of, basically cataloging them to some extent or writing some info or showcasing them from other collectors that contributed to the article as well. But beyond that, there's little, I don't want to say little known. There's some discussions you could dig back in forums and stuff. But and to keep it simple is like what I'm grabbed by with the ceramics. And maybe this is just my own where I'm crazy is you take some, they're unlicensed, right? So any of these ceramics, they've never had any kind of license from Star Wars Corp or, at that time, Lucasfilm later on. But and they're a national company, so they're American companies. So in 1979 to 1981, or 78 to 81, around there, you had these national American companies that were creating ceramic molds and sending them out to pottery studios because it was really big. Like Andy, I don't know if it was for you guys back in the late 70s, early 80s. Here, there was a big ceramic boom. My mother used to go to ceramic classes in some lady's basement where they're paint, where you paint ceramics, and fire them and all that kind of stuff. It was kind of a thing, right? A big thing then. So you have these American companies that were creating these things without a license, sending them out uh, to these pottery studios, and people were pouring them and making them. And I think that's wild because today, if do too much on eBay or Etsy or something like that, you're gonna get shut down pretty quick. And like how like in that world at that time, how like the ripoff that was going on. That's really the call for what it is. How many companies were ripping off on the Star Wars, you know, um, likeness and profiting for it for years. So that I think that's an odd situation you would never see today in this world happen, right? So digging into that further, uh, I work on defining the different companies that created these, which ones came from the different companies, and I could go on and on about it.
Hmm. I mean, you talked about the ceramics and things that Auntie Flo might have made for little Johnny. But have you got any things in the collection that were made by kids themselves? Because again, the impact of Star Wars was huge, and if you couldn't buy it or couldn't get it, then you made it. And I can remember making an AT-AT out of cardboard. It's long since gone, but making a Death Star out of cardboard and a cantina out of polystyrene, and we've seen on the internet homemade dolls and homemade action figures. Do you include those within that area of your collection?
you know, child child made items. I can't say I have any, and I have never targeted or never looked at it that way. Like in some of those things, like we meet our fellow peers that have these things that they share online, or we see at their houses that they've made back then. Again, Jonathan, I hate butchering his name, McElwain. right? I was at his house a couple of years ago, and he was showing me an Imperial shuttle that he made with his father when he was a kid, and it actually had mechanical wings with a knuckle joint, made out of pine and painted gray, and it's like probably a little bit bigger than a softball, right? And it worked, and I was just amazed by it. Like something like that is just precious. Me personally, I don't have anything that I created when I was a child till today. I don't can't say I have an amount of handmade stuff that are from the vintage era. I can't tell if they're, I could only assume that some may have been crafted by a gifted teen or something like that, but no child made items.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you mentioned childhood. What was your introduction to Star Wars? How was it movies first, figures first? Where did you come in?
I don't know exactly which one came first, but I do remember the first time seeing Empire Strikes Back for the first time. My uncle dubbed it on a VHS tape for us. I remember it was a big deal when people started having the ability to copy VHS tapes, and he copied Empire Strikes Back and Starman with Jeff Bridges
Yeah,
onto one tape, and I remember watching that. Um, not being able to comprehend certain parts of Empire Strikes Back, like when Luke goes into the cave and sees himself in Vader's mask. Like I just wasn't able to comprehend that in my child mind. What they're trying to show there.
so you saw Empire first ahead of Star Wars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, yep. And then for my toys, so I was born in '81. Remember getting Jedi figures off of the shelves, and my mother's best friend giving me all her child's toys and getting the hand-me-downs. And I remember I would always go up there and play with his toys when I would go to their house, and then they just ended up giving them to me. So I got all the episode 4 stuff, like Star Wars stuff, handed down to me, and then we had um, Jedi, and then Power to Force, and then Droids Ewoks on the shelf that I remember getting as a kid. Remember going to a store that was called Lloyd's here. It's a local chain, Lloyd's Superstore that was in the Hudson Valley, and it would be grocery store and a department store connected. And my grandmother and my mother would be shopping, and I would go run and play with the toys in there while they were doing their shopping. Fortunately, I was able to find a couple of items with those price tags on it, and those are probably some of the more special items I have. One of them happens to be a 2-pack, which, from my understanding, is hard to find something with a price sticker that doesn't have KB on it or whatever. But they did get their
excellent. These are the two packs that are carded on the orange background.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're like misfit toys, the leftovers, right?
that's it.
Um,
Excellent.
yeah.
You were buying toys then right up to the end of the line. So did you have the droids and Ewoks figures and did you have the skiff and the A-wing and the battle wagon or
I laugh because and I no way don't want to sound like a pissy little kid, but I do. My memory of the Ewoks and Droids line was my parents bringing them home from me because it said Star Wars and being like, "This is not Star Wars," and being disappointed about it. Um, I still have one of my Dulak scouts, right?
yeah,
Is that right? Um, you know, I have 3 figures from when I was a kid. I have a Chewbacca, I have a Bespin Guard, and I have a Dulak scout. Those are the 3 items I still have from when I was a child.
Classic characters from Star Wars.
Um,
especially the Duloc?
yeah, it's
Great. So I mean, obviously, as we all do, you grew up. I assume you were too old for Star Wars in your teens, as we all were, and yeah, or did your love for the movies and for the collecting carry on all the way through? How did your how did things go after childhood?
I gotta say, I stopped. I never can. I am not one of those people that's will say that they never stopped collecting or something like that. I had the toys when I was a kid. I can't say I collected them all. I wanted them all, ripping them open, keeping track, but I wasn't treating them as a collection. Um, Born Star Wars fan, man. So even though I wasn't actively, collecting action figures or any kind of Star Wars paraphernalia through my teens and such, I was, I remember being angry for the special editions, more annoyed about the special editions, going to see, um, you know, the prequels when they came out and stuff. And, I love it all. It's great. My wife, Stephanie, who I enjoy collecting with now more so these days, we met. And when we were first dating, a lot of our, not a lot, but a bit of our relationship was kind of formed around the, let's say Star Wars and heavy metal and Iron Maiden. It's like, you like Iron Maiden? You like Star Wars? Let's get married, So it's kind
It's a
of,
good start.
yeah.
So, as an adult collector, when did you jump back into collecting, and what was the inspiration? What drove you to get the bug again?
Yeah. I know it's probably pretty lame and it's not interesting at all, but it was around 2013. I was looking through Craigslist, right, which is a buy sell format here in the U.S. And I was just, I don't know what I was looking for, probably a house part or something, or a power tool or something, and I stumbled across a Millennium Falcon. I was like, I had that when I was a kid, right? But then I looked at it closer, and I was like, no, mine was different. So I connected, like, what I was looking at there was not like it reminded me of the Millennium Falcon when I was a kid. But then I realized that this has, like, around the exhaust ports on the top hatch, it has, like, like fake smoke airbrushed on there. I'm like, nah, mine didn't have that, right?
This was the 90s version you were looking at.
Yes, correct. And so that got me just, like, into a little rabbit hole where I was like, I want to know why they're modeling this off of the one I had when I was a kid, what changed and all that stuff. So I started, like, that was just like, here's that person in me collecting the difference, like, just not collecting, but looking at the differences in between a product and having that connection with nostalgia, that I was like, and then I dove in, and I started realizing that, there's people talking about this stuff. There's people collecting this stuff, and there's people that are documenting every little, nuance, the difference about them. And so I like that challenge. And then I was like, okay, well, I didn't like not the challenge, but that got me to buy a first, collection off of Craigslist or something. And then, from there it started with buying a Vader case that's full of, whatever amount of figures and loose weapons and used condition and, beat up play sets and vehicles, and sitting there proudly displaying it to, all right, let me start, being a lurker on some of these places called, like, Rebel Scum or the Imperial Gunnery forum. And then, basically finding Facebook groups at the end of 2014 and realizing that if I want to build my collection, I need to, find the money to do it. So that self-sustaining model really, set home to me. And like I mentioned earlier, is that I found, my observation was there's a lot of, reputation means a lot in a community, right? In any community, right? And doing the right thing. So learning what the, you know, standards, some general good morals to have, and to be, self-teaching on how to be a good collector. I started, buying and selling and trying to do the right thing. And I was fortunate enough to build my collection, but my core collection, straight through doing that, through a self-sustaining model of buying and selling. I couldn't imagine doing that now, even though it wasn't that long ago. It just gets, I stopped looking. I used to just spend all my time looking to try to find stuff. And like the last 5 years or so, it's tough. I think it's tough. I don't know, I can't imagine trying to do it now. It's still possible, right?
It's still possible, but yeah, there's a lot more people out there doing it. It's more of a cutthroat market, and yeah, sure, some of the fun, I guess, has gone out of it. But that's a great story. What intrigues me as well is the fact that you collect with your wife, that she shares your passion, and that's something that you can do together. Do you work together to build up one collection, or does she have her own collecting interests? Does she have her own display space? How does that work between the two of you?
Well, it's funny you ask. Like she, I have a feeling, or there's a running joke that people like hanging out with her more than me, and that's probably true. Um, uh, but she has one small area in the collection room, and that's one little cube in the DTOF display case, where she has gathered a whole bunch of unlicensed Darth Vaders. So she loves Darth Vader. That was one of our first, even before Star Wars collecting or vintage collecting. I remember getting her, Darth Vader potato head for Christmas one year or something silly like that. But so she collects unlicensed Vader, which is, just, and she has a little area there, and it's cute, right? It's fun, but I kind of find stuff for her to put in there.
Excellent. Yeah, as I say, that's lovely that you can share that passion, and presumably going out scouting for items, and going to the events and so on. And she's a big part of running the annual as well. I understand.
Yeah, she's a backbone, like with us, with Ron and I, and she does. I wouldn't be the person I am without her, and so she's a big part of who I am, and she's a big part of what went on there, um, at the annual. She makes sure everything's checked and the bags are packed, and she's good like that. She's an amazing human being. So I'm really fortunate there that we can share a passion with this, where it's somebody that's excited to go to Celebration, who's excited to travel and maybe go look at somebody's collection, and stuff. So I consider myself very fortunate there.
Absolutely. Well, we've come full circle. We're back to the annual and events. So that seems like a good place to wrap up. As I said before, it would be great to see you in person sometime, Chris. Are you planning to come to Celebration Europe next year?
Um, it's on the table. It's looking pretty grim for me. I was there in 2016. It was great. And why it's looking not good for me now is that I hate even saying it. It's just they announced Celebration Europe. I wasn't able to attend Anaheim this year, and my wife Steph and I were like, "We're doing it. We're going back." And literally the next work day, we both work together in a mid-sized construction firm here in New York, and literally next day the owner goes up to her and says, "Hey, would you like to go on this trip?" And the trip is a week and a half after Celebration London. It's in London, but I will be in the area. So, maybe we could catch up or something a week later when the smoke's cleared and stuff. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have to get you across to one of the farthest from events at some stage.
yeah.
Gus has come over and some of the other guys. So that's probably the closest that we've got here to an annual event in terms of the sort of small and informal, and attended by the majority of the big collectors. So
I would love to do that. And to be honest with you, I'm more excited about the idea of going to a farthest from, more than Celebration, because I understand what you guys put on there and what you do. I know Chris went out there, and I don't know, that's on the list to do one day.
that would be great. We'll look forward to seeing you there one time.
I really want to thank you for spending some time with us, Chris. I went, at the annual, I saw you, Stephanie, and Ron running around just to make sure everything was just perfect. So I wanted to make sure that everybody got a chance to appreciate some of a glimpse into the insane event that was the annual 2022. Um, it was, like I said earlier, we're going to post some photos along with this interview when it comes out. Check it out. This is a local collectors club event. Wrap your mind around that. Thanks very much for your time, Chris.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Chris.
Hello there. You may remember me from The Empire Strikes Back. Now, don't forget to hit subscribe and also click the bell for notifications.